The cloud streaming wars are heating up. EA has just entered the game. What's up, everybody? Brad here, back again. And late yesterday, EA sorta came out of nowhere and announced a public beta of a cloud streaming service. Now, we know that the cloud streaming platforms are heating up. We have Google, we have Microsoft, and now EA is just waltzing on in, and they've got a service, and it's gonna be a pretty compelling offer. And so this, while I say they kind of surprised everybody, it wasn't really all that surprising, because if you went back to October 29th of 2018, EA announced a project called Atlas, and they actually called it a vision for cloud native gaming future, and it outlined their plans about building an engine, building a service, building the back-end technology to build out a competitive game streaming service. And so yesterday, EA came out and said, hey, if you want to start public beta testing this, here you go. Now, I should qualify that. They're calling this a technical test because what EA is trying to do, much like Google and Microsoft, is trying to understand the impact of latency, what they call jitter, and just understanding the optimization of the platform that they have been building out. And it looks pretty dang compelling. And if you do want to enter that beta, good luck. EA loves their surprise mechanics, and so if you want to be in this beta, you have to log into Origin and play and whatever, and hopefully you'll get picked. Nothing like EA to use a loot box style system to let people in rather than, but whatever. Anyways, it is out there now. People are using it, and what they're allowing you to do is to stream some EA games like FIFA. There's a couple Need for Speed, just games that they own, not all that surprising, and testing them out on their platform. And so here's kind of the thing. This is a big deal because unlike Google, I think EA's streaming service is probably a bigger threat, at least early on, than Google for Microsoft. Because, right, Microsoft has the technology, at least they claim they do. We haven't tried it yet in the real world. But they also have that very, very important back catalog of good quality games. Now, EA has the technology, or at least they're claiming, and the fact that they're public testing it, put some real value into that. And they also have a massive catalog, top games like Titanfall. They've got all the sports games. They've got the Battlefield. They've got a lot of games. And so if you think about it from EA's perspective, moving to a streaming model is probably the best thing they could ever imagine, right? Because every time they want to put a game on an Xbox console or a PlayStation device or whatever, they have to pay a royalty to Microsoft I believe it's typically per game sold, because Microsoft, right, obviously paid to develop and all that, and they want to make their money back, and they want to make some dollars on their consoles. On a streaming service, that doesn't exist. Now, granted, you could say it's very similar to PC gaming. Yes, and I fully agree. That is a logical model, but I don't see what's stopping them from bringing these things to consoles as long as they have a web browser. All this being said, right now, the primary test is focused on the PC. EA does say in their post that they are looking to bring it to all sorts of devices, and that's not a surprise. That they want to bring it to mobile, to TVs, anywhere you can access the web is going to be a place that you can access EA's services. Now, the reason why I said it's kind of a surprise, this sort of felt like, remember when they launched Apex Legends? It kind of came out of nowhere. They kept it under wraps, and then all of a sudden it's here. It's not like EA hyped this up for months and months and months and months, saying we're going to launch a public streaming service. We're going to launch a public streaming. No, they just showed up and said, hey, here it is. And I like that so much more than 6 months of just dripping content out, which I know there's still a model for that, but I prefer just to be surprised. It's great. Surprise mechanics. Maybe they do work, EA. Maybe they don't. Anyways, EA is saying that I find this part fascinating. EA is saying that they are building this out on AWS, which is Amazon Web Services or Amazon's cloud platform, and other public cloud vendors, with the intent of trying to be able to bring their service as close as they can to the user. The reason why I think this is interesting is this is going to be one of EA's potential primary advantages here. Unlike Google, which is only going to use Google services, unlike Microsoft, which is only going to use Azure, and I know Azure is all over the place, EA is using AWS and other vendors, which means really what they're doing is they're building a cloud, non-cloud specific service so that they can just put it wherever they need. Meaning that, hey, let's say you're in New York City and there's not a good AWS server in that area. I know there is, but anyways, just follow along. they could potentially just port that over to Azure, use that service to get you better gaming experience locally without having to wait for Amazon to build out a new data center to make that possible. That's a pretty big deal. And basically, EA has removed themselves being explicitly locked to any certain type of hardware, which will, again, pay big dividends as long as, again, it can be moved from public cloud to public cloud seamlessly. That's a pretty big deal. Now, we don't know how well it's performing yet. We're still early on, and EA has a lot to offer, and EA is typically pretty good at screwing things up when it comes to pricing models. So we will see how EA is going to monetize this, because I swear, EA, if you go to loot boxes in the cloud, people are going to lose their minds. They will lose their minds. But I don't think EA is going to go that route, at least with buying games. There's no way you can do a loot box to own a game. Now, for cosmetics and all that other stuff, yeah, I get it, sort of. Anyways, so EA is rolling this out, and if you're lucky, you get into it. There's a couple things. We don't know an official when this project is going to reach general availability, meaning you start paying dollars to use it, and how they're going to monetize it. Are they still going to do the traditional, like, hey, just go buy the game and then stream it wherever, sort of like the Google Play model, or the Stadia model? Or are they going to go to, hey, come pay an EA Origin or whatever subscription and get all these games wherever you are? I suspect they might go that subscription route because most companies prefer software as a service as opposed to just explicitly buying a game. Who knows? They could do both, but pricing is going to matter. Now, the other interesting thing to look at this is, hey, EA has their public beta out. Google is launching Stadia this fall. I mean, they not even sort of, they actually beat Microsoft to the punch on getting their service out. We know xCloud is coming. I'm not trying to whatever. And the first to market isn't always the best. We know that for historical reasons. Go look at Betamax and VIA. It doesn't matter who's necessarily first. Typically, the better technology will sometimes win, but it's going to be all down to marketing and dollars and content and library. So much more than when your service launches. But you can't undercut the fact that EA now has a service in testing before Microsoft. Granted, Google did do a test late last year, and their service is coming general availability here this fall. But Microsoft isn't too far behind. We all know in October, xCloud will make its grand arrival. The question is going to be, which service do people go with? Because there can very much be death by subscription. What will be interesting to see here, and this is where what I've been hearing kind of in the background, if you will, is that licensing for the streaming stuff is getting really, really hairy. Because let's say Microsoft wants to stream EA, Madden, NFL, whatever, pick your EA title. Is EA going to allow that now? Because they're clearly going to want you to push towards their service. They're obviously still going to sell the traditional disc-based game or digital download. I don't see that changing. But are they going to limit streaming from xCloud and Stadia? You know, it's an interesting thought, and EA, you can't undercut, has a massive library of very, very popular titles, and they have done, for better or for worse, they've done a good job of building up that portfolio of lucrative titles. I mean, we've all heard the rumors, and I've heard them internally as well, that Microsoft has considered buying EA, but I think EA, honestly, is just too big. I mean, that would be a massive bet for Phil Spencer and Satya Nadella to go after that. And then there's also Sony. We haven't heard much from Camp Sony lately about its streaming services, but we know that they're partnering with Microsoft on Azure to make it a reality. So you can't just wipe the plate of Sony, but they're definitely going to be entering it. So at some point here in the near future, we're going to have a PlayStation Cloud streaming platform that's publicly available, xCloud, Stadia, EA. I wonder if it makes you wonder, are any of these other vendors, such as, there's so many, Ubisoft, for example, going to start building their own streaming platforms as well. Who knows? I was honestly a little surprised to see that this was on AWS. I thought that maybe they were going to be picking up some of Microsoft's xCloud technology as a white label to do it, but I guarantee some of the smaller vendors will, because it's a lot of cash flow to be able to build out something like this. You got to remember, this is a big bet for EA. EA can absorb this type of a bet. Not every game developer can. So EA going its own route, in theory, could also white label their service. We don't know if Amazon has a tie into this. I don't think that they do, only because it says they're using other available public cloud. AWS would not be very happy about that. But it's interesting. I love this kind of stuff. We now have a new competitor is entering the field. I'm very curious to see how this shakes out in the market. I really want to know about the licensing stuff, about where these games are going to show up, because if EA does not allow them on Stadia or xCloud or Sony's thing, that's going to be a massive lever for that company. If it's good, we don't know how well it's going to translate into real world, but if it is good, man, people are going to be having to subscribe to a lot of different services, which may not do all that well. And it's probably the reason why Microsoft is getting so aggressive with its Game Pass service right now. If you think about it, they're doing basically go out and buy 3 years of Gold, Xbox Live Gold, and convert it into a Game Pass Ultimate, and you get 3 years of it free, right? For reduced cost effectively. Maybe that's why they're going so aggressive, is to keep people in the Game Pass and get them locked in. It's getting interesting, guys. The streaming market is far from established, materialized, mature, or any of those words. There's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of companies who are going to enter. Not everyone will survive, but EA is making its mark. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll catch all of you right back here next time.